So the economic figures today show we're all getting poorer again, and we're led by the most incompetent chancellor in history, Rachel.
There are some very big questions. She said she worked for 10 years at the Bank of England, turns out it was 5.5. She said she was an economist at the Bank of England, turns out she was in customer service. And on expenses, well, she had very big problems. When she worked for a bank and as a member of parliament, she had a credit card taken away. So here's the question, will the real Rachel Reeves please stand up? Please stand up. Nigel Farage is calling out Rachel Reeves again. She claimed to have worked at the Bank of England for a decade, but it was only 5.5 years, a minor mistake, hardly. Accuracy matters when managing the country's finances. She had this to say about new tech: today we are at the forefront of some of the most exciting developments in the world, like artificial intelligence and life sciences. We have opened up our planning system to build new infrastructure, like onshore wind farms or data centers, driving the AI revolution and, of course, housing. This government says it's absolutely determined to build 1.5 million homes during the course of this parliament. Interestingly, that was the same target for the last Conservative government. Although, I have to say, with housing, and we'll deal with it separately perhaps, even if we do build 1.5 million homes, that won't even be enough for the number of legal migrants that come over the course of the next 5 years. But will growth return? Are these proposals enough? Farage quickly called her out, highlighting a pattern of misleading claims. This isn't her first controversy. She lost her parliamentary credit card after £4,000 in unpaid expenses. Now, she's claiming the UK economy is growing based on just a 0.1% increase. Farage and many others aren't convinced. The real question is, how much longer can she keep this up? With trust in politicians already low, this could define her career. Will she admit the truth, or will the cracks keep growing? One thing's certain, Farage isn't letting it go. Good evening. So, as you know, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, has been off to China. Now, to be fair, this was not a last-minute panic trip, it was booked some time ago. Although, I have little doubt she would have urged the Chinese, please, please, please buy government bonds, because our 10- and 30-year yields, that mean interest rates, have been going up and up over the course of the last few weeks. That's at the same time as inflation is going up, growth is at best flatlining, and the pound is starting to tumble on the exchanges. I have to say, I thought her speech today, I'm not even going to show you any of it, frankly, was a nothingness. I believe she's completely and utterly out of her depth. And when she says that growth is the #1 mission of this government, well, you know what? Increasing the size of the public sector while at the same time doing things that reduce the size of the private sector is not, in my opinion, a recipe for growth. She looks tired. Well, that's fair enough, it's not easy being a cabinet minister. But somehow, you just get the feeling, I get the feeling, she won't last more than a few months. I wonder whether you agree at home. Will Reeves survive? The Chancellor doesn't want you to know this, so here it is again. Rachel Reeves is under fire for another CV discrepancy. This time, she overstated her time as an economist at the Bank of England. The Chancellor's office is blaming it on an administrative error. Here's what's worse. According to a BBC investigation, Reeves was investigated at Halifax for misusing expenses worth thousands. The Treasury says she was unaware, but a whistleblower has provided evidence to the BBC today. You know, Rachel Reeves gets up, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, says the Tories have lied to the nation. They've hidden the figures. It was almost like a sort of old-fashioned Stalinist Soviet show trial. The Tories are the guilty men. They tried to answer back, but they couldn't. But tucked in the middle of all this, and not really getting the coverage that it normally would have, is the whole scheme for winter fuel payments. Now, just to remind you, Tony Blair brought this in nearly 25 years ago. There were criticisms that some very rich pensioners were getting a winter fuel allowance. But what she's basically done is say that unless you're on pension credits, you aren't going to get the winter fuel allowance. This affects 10 million people, the vast majority of whom are not rich or well off. And this comes at a time when gas prices have risen significantly. I have to say, I think it's rather a cruel thing to do, and I certainly won't be voting for it as and when I get the opportunity. There were times in the past where maybe the argument was that it wasn't necessary, that it had been given as a bribe. But it's almost like Labour is saying, well, we don't care about the pensioners. 'Cause they're not going to vote for us anyway, and that money that could have gone to pensioners has gone for massive public sector pay rises, including over 22% for junior doctors. I put it to you, so is the Chancellor being honest with the public? If she's lying about this, what else is she hiding? In my view, she's misleading us about the economy. Growth is stagnant, interest rates are rising, and business confidence is sinking. As the first female chancellor, she's proving to be a disaster and possibly dishonest too. Nigel Farage isn't just attacking Rachel Reeves, he's raising a bigger issue. How can the public trust a politician who misrepresents her own career? Reeves repeatedly claims she spent nearly a decade at the Bank of England, but official records show it was only 5.5 years, almost half of what she said. Those women being forced to wait longer for their pension and hit twice by changes in 1995 and then again in 2011 have been done an injustice. As Shadow Pensions Minister in 2011, I was proud to work with Age UK, the trade union Unison, and many women, including my mother, to call on the government to think again. We were pleased then to win a partial concession so that no woman had to wait for more than an extra 18 months before they could claim their pension. But I said then, and I say again today, that it does not go far enough in righting this wrong. There are still 2.6 million women who have lost out as a result of the government rewriting the rules, of whom 300,000 will have to wait an extra 18 months before they can retire. Last week, I caught up with Barbara Bates, who lives in County Durham, whom I campaigned with in 2011. Even after the government's concession, Barbara still faces working an extra 78 weeks before she will see her state pension. The osteoarthritis affecting her wrists and thumbs when I first got to know her 5 years ago has now spread to her hands, knees, neck, and right foot. She said, no government can change the way our bodies age, and in particular those of us who started work at 15 in the 70s. A lifetime of menial and heavy jobs that are vital but unnoticed. Like other members, I've also been contacted by constituents. This morning, Margaret C. phoned me during her office tea break. She works mostly on her feet with lots of lifting, and in the past year, she has had 3 operations. Her husband has just had a triple heart bypass, and she wants to be able to spend more time caring for him as he grows older. Because of these changes, she won't be able to do that. Barbara and Margaret are just 2 examples of what we know are hundreds of thousands of stories. I will give way. I'm very grateful. Farage wasted no time calling this out as another case of political dishonesty. If she exaggerates her resume, what else is she misleading us about? This isn't just a small mistake, it's a matter of credibility. Leaders in charge of the economy should be upfront, especially when their decisions impact millions. Farage's point is clear: if Reeves can't be honest about her own past, why should anyone trust her with the country's future? Good evening. I think somebody in the Treasury got their sums wrong when they were advising Chancellor Rachel Reeves. You see, the Labour government says it's not a problem. 75% of farms just won't be affected by these new inheritance tax rules. And yet, the National Farmers Union themselves say it will be at least 2/3. I have to say, my conclusion on all of this is, the small farmer, somebody running 5 or 10 acres, a smallholder, basically will be fine. The giant agribusinesses, they'll be fine as well. It's the people in the middle that simply won't be fine. Property prices over the last few years have rocketed, land prices too. In fact, in Lincolnshire, an acre of land now is about £30,000 an acre. It is true that some billionaires have bought up vast tracts of farmland without ever intending to farm them themselves, as a way of avoiding inheritance tax. But what this proposal does is hit families running farms, families whose incomes are incredibly modest, far more modest than I think most people believe. They've got an asset, yes, that's worth a lot of money. Although for many of them, it isn't just about money, it's about a way of life that's been going on for generations. I would ask people to think. Our countryside is admired the world over. People love the British countryside, and one of the reasons is that those families have farmed it so well for so long. Now, this was Farage then. There's her financial history. In 2015, she lost her parliamentary credit card after racking up over £4,000 in unpaid expenses. A politician in charge of economic policies couldn't even manage her own spending. These cards are for work expenses, not running up bills and ignoring them. She wasn't the only MP caught, but being on that list doesn't do her any favors. Farage didn't mince words. He questioned how someone with her track record could be trusted to manage the economy. Financial responsibility starts with personal accountability. If she couldn't handle a single credit card, how can she manage the country's budget? So Rachel Reeves has the audacity to tell the businessman Farage that he hasn't got the faintest clue how to manage the economy. This is coming from the woman who has no business experience whatsoever. She spent most of her life as a public servant, aside from, don't forget, those 3 years as an economist. Oh, sorry, no, a woman in retail banking. She has absolutely no idea. Her employment record and her budget show this. We've now got the Bank of England saying that they are not going to cut interest rates anymore and that the economy is going to be flatlining. As a consequence of this budget, all the wealthy people are running away from the country. This woman said that she wouldn't raise taxes on working people because she thought, oh, I'll just do a big hike in capital gains tax, and that will do the job to fix the problems with the economy. But then she found out that actually, that makes wealth creators leave the economy. HMRC told her that if she put up capital gains tax by 10%, the country would actually lose £2 billion a year. So then she was panicking, trying to put tax rises here, there, and everywhere, stealing the fuel allowance from pensioners and whatnot. She has got no idea what she is doing, yet she's got the audacity to tell Nigel Farage that he hasn't got a clue. This is the man who is now surrounded by some of the most brilliant businessmen in the country and the world. He's got Elon Musk on his side, the richest man in the world. Rachel Reeves has the audacity to say they won't know how to run the show? Give me a break. Now, The Telegraph gave Nigel the opportunity to respond to what Rachel Reeves had to say. Brilliantly, he said, unlike Rachel from accounts, I have set up and run businesses for over 30 years, creating jobs and paying tax. Well done, Nigel. This isn't just about one politician's mistakes, it's about trust and accountability. If an ordinary person lied on a job application or ignored their debts, they'd face real consequences. So why should politicians be treated any differently? Farage knows how to channel public frustration, and this time, he has plenty to work with. Reeves is under fire, and the big question is, will she address these concerns or just hope people forget? Either way, the damage is done, and Farage isn't letting it slide. Rachel Reeves is talking about the fact that the press has apparently bullied Dame Alison Rose. Sorry, I'm confusing her with Howard Davis, who'll ask you in about well, you know, the press has been bullying her. No. She, unfortunately, leaked personal information to somebody at the BBC. This is identity politics. This is happening because she's a woman? It's not right. She's lost her job. I couldn't care less what sex she is, what gender she is. I couldn't care less what color she is. I'm not interested. I believe in a meritocracy where you rise on ability. Reeves wants the public to believe the UK economy is improving, but the numbers say otherwise. She pointed to a 0.1% growth rate as proof of progress. Let's be real, that's not growth. It's stagnation dressed up as success. Farage didn't hold back, calling out the absurdity of celebrating a tiny 0.1% growth rate while people struggle with rising costs, stagnant wages, and higher taxes. That's not economic success, it's barely treading water. Any business employing 5 or more people has today been hammered. And I make the point that I've set up companies and run companies. Nobody on the front bench has ever worked in private business. Nobody on the front bench understands what genuine risk capital is. Our business